Hello, everyone. Welcome to National MSME Day, Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises Day. We believe here at TGov that this is a very important day to celebrate, which is why we've gathered this group of esteemed panelists to speak more about the topic. TGov is very driven to harness the next generation of these entrepreneurial spirits, and so we believe it's important to get all the voices in the discussion as possible. So my name is Zubin, and I'm an intern at TGov.
My name is Elliot, and I'm also interning with Zubin at TGov, and we both just finished our first year of university. And then I think we'll have everyone introduce ourselves, so why don't we start here and go around?
Alright, so my name is Kabir Mehta. Our MSME, or our micro enterprise, is called Mansika, and currently I'm in 12th grade studying commerce and maths.
Hello, I'm Audrija Bhattacharya. I'm also a 12th grade, and I'm also a 12th grader, and as Kabir mentioned, we both extensively worked on our project called Project Mansika, and we'll talk more about it.
Hi, this is Kirti. I lead a startup in the environmental management space. This is after about 19 years in public and private enterprise spaces as work experience.
Hi, my name is Ketan Ray. I am a co-founder of Industry. It's in the EV space. We work in transportation sector, and happy to be here.
Great, awesome. So as you can see, we have a wide variety of different areas that we're going to be covering today. So just for a little bit of context into the situation, the definition and significance of MSMEs is very convoluted. So we seek to settle it once and for all in this conversation. And on top of that, we also understand that MSMEs are responsible for a large amount of total employment globally, which means that they have a large influence in our daily life. However, women-led MSMEs face significant challenges, with around 62% reporting severe impacts from crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic. So we also understand that they're not perfect by any means, and we seek to challenge and understand some of the hurdles they face today in this conversation. So without further ado, let's get started into the questions. Despite the growth of MSMEs and their immense contributions locally and globally, what are some of the hurdles that your enterprises have faced, and how have you pivoted or solved this problem accordingly?
Good. Yeah.
So our project, it is called Project Mansika. It is about menstrual hygiene, right? So from when I was in 7th grade, 5 years back, I remember I was with my mom, and they used to give sanitary napkins in a black polythene bag. Why? Because it's a myth, it's a taboo. And I think with our project, we wanted to kind of conquer that myth. We wanted to generate awareness that it is a natural thing. It is fine. We needed to create awareness and also impact the environment in certain ways. And that's why one dynamic that we added was cloth pads. And then we distributed them, and also, we distributed.
Go on.
Alright, we distributed them to underprivileged girls and women, and overall impacted around 5,000 to 7,000 women in only Haryana.
Also, as you mentioned, how women-owned MSMEs face a lot of challenges. So thankfully, we both come from a background where menstruation and talking about such things is not a big taboo, but we've been working with people who come from such backgrounds where, period is a huge taboo, like he mentioned. So this also is, I feel, one of the challenges, because girls who are menstruating, they have to take, for instance, like if you talk about schoolgirls, they have to take so many days off from school because they do not have the right means to tackle their period and the 4 or 5 days that they're experiencing the menstruation. So if you think about it in the long run, this also affects their ability to contribute, and if in the future they were to start working in an MSME, this would become a hurdle, them not being able to work for 5-6 days in a month. So I feel like that is also how this problem plays out.
Okay. I think I'll pick up from the thread that you're mentioning, the underlying ethos within that. For any SME or MSME who's trying to break the norm and put out something that is quote unquote innovative or different in the market, one of the first challenges they're going to face is educating the potential customer, whether it is in your case, educating parents and kids. Right. Let's say in our case, it was about the platform that we're building for environmental management. We still have to, and I consciously keep telling myself, it's 95% education and 5% business. when we talk to a client, because you're trying to do something. Obviously, you've thought of an opportunity where no solution exists, right? And that is how you've created an enterprise, or at least thought of creating a business around that. But most of the time, it also needs a lot of effort from the entrepreneur themselves to educate the customer before he or she is willing to pay for your product or service and then take it forward from you. So that is a major challenge for a lot of SMEs that come in and go out. Unless you have a big brother or somebody who's willing to update your product on day zero, which typically is not the case. The first hurdle probably is, along with product development or idea development, is educating the customer and bringing on board the willingness to pay for your offering.
So I think the question was what enterprise. I mean, like, as an enterprise, what are the challenges which I have faced? And let me just tie up with what is happening in India as well, right? So if you actually look at some of the numbers of Niti Aayog, there's like about 6.5 crore MSMEs. Out of that, about 6.4 crores of businesses. They essentially are informal, right? They don't have enough people, and there's these are the enterprises who essentially have a lot of challenges in driving productivity. So let me connect back to what I do. So we are into EV transportation. So we work with a lot of drivers. We buy a lot of assets on our books, and then kind of employ a lot of drivers to do last mile delivery for brands and all that, right? So the single most challenge which we initially get is obviously about the financing itself. Like everyone knows, one of the bottlenecks in kind of proliferating the EVs is actually access to credit, right? The second challenge which we see is actually from the skill standpoint itself. So transportation field is a very low margin business, okay, and you have to kind of make money in it. You have to drive efficiency and productivity. Now there's a lot of talk in the MSME sector that technology adoption is not happening this. But how would technology adoption happen when people are not educated? Look at who we work with. These are semi-skilled workers who are hardly ever educated. We obviously spend a lot of time in training them. We use a lot of apps to train them, but that's a real challenge. How do you drive that adoption? How do you make them, and there is also the whole thing about, like if you look at the SDG 8, right, and about the kind of work which is required to be given to these people, right? There is social security, which is a problem, right? How do you kind of get, when we are working with drivers, how do we ensure that we actually are able to pay them, because we aren't able to make enough money out of this whole business of it. How do we ensure that we are extending those aspects of social security, like giving them the provident fund and all those things? And how do we ensure that they continue to be upskill themselves? How do we make that investment? The third thing which I feel as a micro enterprise or small enterprise, right, is in the whole thing about compliance, right? There are so many difficulties in adhering to all these compliances, right? Where do we go? I mean, like, when we started out, we didn't know about a lot of things, taxation, this and that. We didn't have access to a lot of credit. Okay, we raised some funding and so we got some access. But most of these people don't actually know how to kind of navigate through these compliances, right? These taxation. So I think there is, I mean, on all, so coming back, I mean, I think there's a lot of challenges with respect to skills. There's a lot of challenges with respect to compliance. There's a lot of challenge with technological adoption. And if you have to kind of do it at scale, you need to kind of address a lot of these things, right? Yeah. So that would be my take on it. Sorry.
And I'm really glad that you touched on the skills and the financial inclusion and even technology, because those are all topics that we'll also cover a bit later. And then it was also interesting to hear about how you guys were breaking barriers with taboo topics in society and using education. I mean, that's the biggest hurdle that it seems like you faced. So that kind of blends into the next question that we have as well. Obviously, Zubin and I, being interns for TGALF, we've also saw more student businesses like yours and NGOs that are breaking social barriers. And you also have a great focus on sustainability too, which I think is important to mention. So the next question is, do you guys think that the government of India is doing a good job to support sustainable growth of small enterprises, micro enterprises. Maybe you guys can start with that, given your focus on EVs and the environment.
So I'll just touch upon a couple of things which we use. So government is a huge purchaser of services from the MSMEs. Correct. So there is, what they've done is they have something called the government e-commerce portals. So GEM, which is called, right. I think they've done a great job. In fact, I was just looking at some statistics, and they've actually doubled the number of orders which they are currently, kind of processing. All these PSEs, basically, these are public sector enterprises, central public sector enterprises, as well as government is purchasing a lot from the MSMEs. Okay, the other thing which they have mandated. Okay, so like for example, let's say 25% of the purchase has to happen from them, right? And then there are networks which are coming up. For example, ONDC network, which has come up. This is basically for digitizing the commerce, where suppliers and buyers can come together to kind of do transactions, business transactions, which allows a lot of MSMEs to kind of access a larger market, right? And to be able to access a lot of services which they normally cannot have access to. For example, let's say, I have to access logistics to transport my goods. I don't know how to get a great deal out of it. So you go to that network, the ONDC network, and then see, what actually I can do with. And the other thing which I think is, I talked about financing, right? So there's a lot of support in terms of the PLIs, right? Production linked incentives. There's banks are giving preferential lending to a lot of priority sectors. So priority sector lending is great, and then you have a lot of like credit schemes, like you have subvention schemes where you can easy credit loan, flexi loans, which are happening to MSMEs. I mean, it's a very broad topic, but yes, I think the government is doing its bit. But I would say is the execution right at the bottom. Is it like eventually you've created this entire thing, plan, framework, and all that? Are the people actually able to access it? I'll give you an example. Sorry, I'm extending this a bit. From an EV standpoint, right? There's a Delhi government provides subsidy to EV players, right? It used to give, and a lot of people haven't got that money out of it. Sorry, I'm saying a record, but it does pinch you, right? If you're a small enterprise, you don't have capital, you essentially bought a vehicle and then you're not getting this thing, so your money is stuck there, right? And there's no clarity when that money is going to come.
Yeah.
So these kind of things are important, for small enterprises to have that clarity so that you're able to do it, right?
So let me just pick up where he left off. Whenever I think of at least the enterprises in general, including my own, I would imagine any government incentive should act as a bonus. It should not be the reason why I sustain as a business. It's very easy to say, very difficult to get it that way. But if you can plan it that way, it starts making much more sense for you as an entrepreneur. But tying into what I think you are asking, sustainability, not in business sustainability, but planet consciousness. There's a bunch of new threads which are emerging as we speak in India. And if I were to just put out a few things that are coming right to my mind right away. One, I think we've already achieved our renewable energy targets, which were set for 2030 this year. India has already done that. Solar and renewable energy targets we've already met. That is something that the government of India has already done. And having seen that, the PLI scheme that Ketan was mentioning, they did a smart thing, I think about 3 years back, by tailoring the scheme to making, let's say, solar panels in India, manufacturing solar panels in India. But that has kind of created a chain reaction among people who are in that space of putting together solar modules to making solar PV cells and a bunch of other things going forward. Beyond that, there is a lot of conversation happening. There's not very specifics that are yet to come out. For example, the market regulator in India, SEBI as we call it, the Stock Exchange Board of India, has mandated the top 1,000 listed companies in India by market cap to report sustainability numbers annually. Okay. Now, this started in financial year 22-23, but starting financial year 25-26, the big guys are responsible for reporting not only their numbers but also sustainability and environmental numbers for 75% of their value chain. That's where the MSMEs start kicking in. So if I am, let's say, one of the largest companies in India, let's just take, Maruti Suzuki as an example, because almost everybody understands Maruti. Maruti works with roughly about 10,000 suppliers who are not at that size. There are people who do maybe 5 crore, 10 crore turnover a year, to people who are doing, let's say, 10,000 crores turnover a year as well. All of these people have to start becoming planet conscious, as you rightly say. So the pressure is coming in one sense from that end, from Maruti's end onto the supplier base that they have. Parallelly, the announcement last year was made of creating a carbon credit market in India, and there's a green credit market in India that is being created, a bunch of things that are happening. These are avenues to kind of incentivize people to go down that road, right? So what I'm basically trying to say is the wave is just forming, and there are multiple things which are going in that direction, which seem to be making the right noises. And of course, if we start talking about what is not happening, I can write a big newspaper size essay on it. But the point is, in our mind, at least from where we see as business people, we like to be optimistic, right? We hope there will be more that will come in the future, and we are trying to kind of dovetail our businesses to whatever wind we can ride, tailwind we can ride, and then take it forward from there.
So of course, being the ripe age of 70 that we haven't had a lot of government interaction with the government in any capacity. But speaking from a purely economic point of view, there's a very common debate that goes on that in a free market, can corporate enterprises really act in the benefit of, in the interest of public without any sort of government intervention? And when you think about it, there is no incentive at the end of the day for corporates to function without, like you said, government subsidizing or providing some sort of benefits for them to act in that way. Also, when you think about it, corporates can hear the role of, let's say, NGOs or organizations like TGELF even come into play. For instance, TGELF, for instance, motivated us to continue with Project Mansika. And had TGELF not been there, I do not think we would have taken Mansika to this level. So NGOs and enterprises such as this incentivize corporates and people to take up projects that are in the public interest. And I think NGOs and organizations like this are playing a huge role in this as well.
Talking about sustainability, there's this thing which a lot of people miss. Resources, right? We're talking about resources. How do we conserve them and use them efficiently? There's another resource, the most important one, human resources, right? Talking about that, there is such thing called as disguised unemployment, where a lot of people are working. I'll give you an example. There's a farm which needs 2 people to work upon, but 4 people are working on it. That means not every resource, or as not every person is working at its apt productivity, right? That is a problem that we need to tackle. Now, for the government that I'll talk about, there's a scheme called Maganrega, which provides work, a guarantee of 100-day work for these people. And also there was this kind of thing I was studying about, which is called the SGP movement. Now, what that is that unicorns, suppose Delivery, it's a logistics company, right? Their warehouse is in Taru. It's on the outskirts of Gurgaon. There are a lot of villages located there. So what the government does now is they fund them to take people from these villages to work in their warehouse. So it's like a year-long process, right? They'll first train them, all on the expense of the government. So they'll train them, they'll provide them refresher courses, right? And after that, if they are working skillfully, they'll hire them in their headquarters or hire them in their, proper kind of logistics work, the business work. If they are not, then they can work in their warehouse, because ultimately that is the best they're doing, right? Because they are getting employment after all. So yeah.
Just on a different note altogether. My wife thinks I am unemployed. That is running for you, by the way. Okay. So.
I mean, it's super interesting to hear about all the different chains and avenues that you can go through to receive all this funding, as well as it seems like there's some that definitely have a few more loopholes and filler that needs to be done to really take care of the human resources that we're taking care of.
Yeah.
But I mean, in a similar point that you're talking about, it's the government's job or it's someone's job to be looking out for the public good. And you also spoke a lot about the NGO involvement and how that's helped small businesses or small projects like yours to get that kickstart that they need. So in a similar vein, I have another question. I'm sure that you can all speak to the potential benefits of these enterprises in supporting community development or promoting social responsibility. And what are some of the ways that your enterprise has carried out this mission of service? And how can we continue to do this in the future as a country, as individuals? And then also adding on, do you envision NGO involvement as a potential pathway that MSMEs can adopt more sustainable development?
Interesting.
Okay. We are a for-profit organization, of course, but we do have a lot of focus on our, the drivers and the people who are working, and we ensure that we are able to kind of meet the expectation in terms of the remuneration which we pay them or the upskilling opportunity which is available to them, right? We do make sure that they have proper cover of a couple of things like health benefits which are there, which typically in the market, if you have an issue, you don't give a health benefit. We have personal accident cover which we provide to them. In a way, we are doing, as a startup, whatever we can manage, we are trying to do that, right? We are compliant with minimum wages mandate which is given by the government. So I mean, like, as a startup, probably we are not in a position to do a lot of CSR activity or things like that, but certainly we have our focus that once we sort of scale to a certain level, we will continue to focus on our manpower.
Right.
Yeah.
And just adding on to that, most of the conversation that I've always seen on how industrial growth helps the economy or helps the public at large, it's not black and white. I mean, you're either on the capitalist end of the spectrum or on the socialist end of the spectrum, right? But that is not how it pans out. You have to be somewhere in between always. So you need to allow free market, but you also have to make sure that the public is getting the right things, as he's pointing out. And I think, at least as far as I have understood the history of this country, for the past 30 years, we are very consciously trying to stick to the middle path. Ever since liberalization, if you were to call it that, 91, the thought has always been that yes, there needs to be a free market because people need employment, and we need profit makers like us also, in the economy for things to grow. At the same time, I think the balancing comes from largely government regulation, but also there's a lot of examples of people consciously doing the right thing, right? Even without any government compulsion. For example, if you look at the annual rankings of the best place to work or a good place to work, right? What does that essentially mean? They're making profit, but they're also making sure that their employees, whether direct or indirectly associated with them, are also taken care of, right? As you grow in scale, of course, the compulsion becomes regulatory, but still there's a lot of people who are consciously trying to do things as well. And if I'm not wrong, and Ketan can comment on that, I think at least the current breed of decent-sized companies and entrepreneurs who are, let's say, between 25 to 50 in that space, the very way they look at an enterprise has changed. I remember we had this debate about what is a social enterprise and what is a typical enterprise. A lot of people are jumping into this space because they see an opportunity to both make profits for themselves and shareholders, but also add value to society simultaneously. And you are a good example of that, the way what you're doing with your product. So I think the mindset itself is shifting, and it's not that black and white anymore. That's how I perceive it.
I just kind of double click on that, right? Because if you look at the new breed of youngsters who are joining the workforce, right, or they are very conscious about these things, right? Initially, probably the Gen X and this thing, they were more focused towards probably safety and things like that, basic. Now they want to have a reason, right? They have to have, so they look at companies not solely from the standpoint of who's going to pay me more. They actually want to understand the vision of the company, how they are making an impact, and I think that's a great trend. And the society at large, has become more accepting for people to make unconventional choices in terms of the career, right? So yeah, I completely agree. I mean, like, this is this has completely changed the way people are looking at workplaces and what does it mean to be part of a team, right, an organization. And then that's why probably organizations are also now, HRs are also very, very focused towards creating meaning in work, being part of doing all these CSR activities or things like that, so as to kind of align to that, right?
Yeah.
With what you said, I also feel that there's a huge role that social media and this technology and information at our fingertips have played. People have in general become much more socially conscious and socially aware, and people are also holding enterprises and corporate institutions accountable for what they're doing and what benefit that they're having. So I feel like people here are also a huge stakeholder, and social media has mobilized us to become that way.
Talking from a business point of view, the most beautiful thing about India is the population. Why? Because we've got over 1 billion people in our country. The amount of entrepreneurs that we're having, they can instantly see if their product is going to be successful or not. Why? Because the entire market is in India. 90% of what we produce is sold in India. So they can easily come up with new ideas. They can experiment. Why does a business enter the market? Because they need to solve a problem. So what do they do next is that they enter, they survive, and they grow, right? So once they enter the market, they can figure out, okay, what do I need now, how to tackle this, and how many shareholders I can get, right? If they're not able to survive, well enough, they can see that at a very kind of quick pace. So I think that's the beauty that a lot of, as Sir's talked about, is a trend of entrepreneurs. Why? Because they have an option to fail and still do better.
Right, yeah. It's great to see all the passion that you all have for your businesses, especially the student businesses and the NGOs. And so I think we'll wrap up the discussion here. But I am curious to hear one final thought about maybe how T-Gelf allowed you to grow your MSME.
I'll start with a sad fact that India is having a lot of brain drain. So a lot of young people our age who have the ability to do so are looking at universities outside, for instance. And I think this is a very sad fact because India, like he said, has so much potential, and I think the government really needs to, capitalize on that. But also because of this whole trend of, wanting to go outside, and the whole focus that these outside universities have on extracurriculars, for instance. This is sort of acting as an external motivator for a lot of young people to come up with, social enterprises and NGOs and stuff like that. And maybe the motivation is external, but at the end of the day, it does leave a positive impact. And there are so many people coming up with so many new initiatives, and it does have a positive impact for the greater good. So I think this in a way is a good thing, and T-Gelf has been one of those external motivators for us as well. Like I said, I do not think Project Mansika would have come this far had it not been the platform that T-Gelf provided us and the motivation that it provided us to continue with this project.
Oh, definitely. So we're 16 or 17, right? We're very young right now. And we basically, a lot of our curriculum was focused on academics, right? We did not know how to collaborate, or we didn't know how to actually solve problems critically and practically. This our Project Mansika, we learned so much. I mean, we knew how to effectively raise funds. We knew how to effectively do groundwork. We knew how to, talk to organizations, negotiate with them. So it also benefits the both of us and society as a whole. I don't think this all would be possible without TGAF. And seeing that they give opportunities to a lot of students, because not only just Youth Leader, Company of the Year, even the collaboration with FedEx, now we're targeting globally. And I think that's a beautiful thing that we are able to do this from the comfort of our homes. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity.
And I hope this discussion helps our listeners and hopefully motivates them to support MSMEs in their local communities. So thank you to all of our panelists today. It was great to have this discussion with you.
Cool.
And happy MSME Day, of course.
Thank you very much for that.